The cotton wool child. The rationale behind this seminar is to share some thoughts and reflections related to what we call the cotton wool child. The child who is wrapped up by adults as a fragile and precious parcel, so as to be protected from any harm and danger. In this scenario, the adult undertakes the role of being the protector and guardian of young children, knowing and deciding for their needs, their desires, and their capabilities. In regards to child protection or danger alert, or in viewing children as vulnerable, inexperienced, and young, adults carry out the responsibility and duty to do their best in order to eliminate any type of risks and dangers. So far, so good. However, in reality, adults tend to make decisions and inflict on children particular activities and lifestyles that they believe are safe or secure. They raise children under certain do's and don'ts by attempting to control any possible source of harm, injury, or risk. This overprotective attitude leads to the other end of the spectrum, that one of excessive regulations and policies where a no-risk culture is embedded, not just in the house or the classroom, but anywhere where children can be. That would be playgrounds, restaurants, public spaces, if and when they are child-friendly, and so on. In an attempt to answer why this is happening and why we are going down this route of overprotection, Fioredi has come up with two main reasons. The first reason is what he calls the crisis of adult identity. What does it mean to be an adult, especially in relation to children? Adulthood today is no longer given any positive valuation, according to Fioredi. In order to be cool, you need to look young. You need, in general, to look younger than what you are. Or, in other cases, we view adults as a risk to children. There is a do not trust adults and strangers understanding. This is really misanthropic, in the sense that we genuinely believe that adults cannot help but only abuse children. We are creating a world of witch hunts and adult insecurities, a world where we become so estranged from children that we are no longer in a position to do anything for them. We have reached the point where when children have problems, we feel awkward, and we are no longer sure if we should be involved in children's lives and problems. Give a child a hug who cries on the first day at the nursery? No way. You might be accused or misunderstood. Another point is that we have lost our sense of adult solidarity, which means you only ever have two people looking after one child. It is always their responsibility to look after their own children. The sense of community or collectivism is vanishing. Fioredi highlights that the second factor that shapes the cotton wool child is the redefinition of who a child is. Children are defined by their vulnerability, and they should be protected. Have you heard of the indoor helmets? They are a must at the moment in the States, and I'm sure that they will shortly arrive, if not yet in Europe. Let me not refer to Britain. Another example of this crisis in child definition has to do with this image that it personally makes me feel so sad, is this image of a child on a leash. Certainly children have less experiences, knowledge and understanding of the dangers and threats, and our duty of care is to ensure that they are safe. But what happens to this cotton wool child when she grows up? What happens when she hasn't learned to confront uncertainty and risk by herself? Not taking risks and learning about the consequences makes children less human, less responsible, less autonomous. If we wrap children in a blanket of caution, we suffocate them and give them no space and opportunity to experiment with the unknown, with the unfamiliar. Their play and free time become supervised and structured, and their sense of adventure, freedom, and inventiveness is condensed. As a matter of fact, children have very little time to themselves, and there is a huge increase in adult surveillance. Weaver et al. Argue that there is overloaded surplus safety today, leading to a new reality, the reality of no risk at all. Bundy et al. Highlight that this no risk is a risk itself, as it distorts and limits children's freedom to play by having negative implications on their personal well-being and growth. So the question is, why can't we trust our children to work out their own risks? Why don't we invest in their independence? And instead, we invest in their overprotection and their dependence. How did we grow up? How do we prepare our children for their uncertain future as a future generation? John Adams mentioned that we are all true risk experts. We have all been trained by practice and experience in the management of risk. The development of our expertise in coping with uncertainty begins from infancy, when we learn to crawl, to walk, to talk, to ride a bicycle, and to handle sharp things, and the list goes on. Through trial and error processes, driven by curiosity and excitement, young children, like adults, perform a balancing act between the expected rewards of their actions against the perceived costs of their failure. Failure, mistakes, accidents are part of learning, and it is this balancing act that is explained through Adams' risk thermostat model. Under this model, everyone has a propensity to take risks by the moment they are born. This is their way of survival, their way of engaging with their environment and the world around them. Of course, this propensity varies from one individual to another, in the sense that some like it hot, others cool, but no one wants the absolute zero. The propensity is influenced by the potential rewards of risk-taking, the potential success. Perceptions of risk are influenced by experience of accident losses, either one's own or from people around their surroundings. Risk-taking decisions represent a balancing act in which perceptions of risk are weighted against propensity to take risk. And accident losses are by definition a consequence of taking risks. And the more risks an individual takes, the greater on average will be the losses and gains he or she incurs. This model, even though it might sound quite advanced, applies to young children. They have this propensity and this anticipation. Through their mistakes or achievements, children learn to cope with uncertainty and novelty. They experiment with their boundaries and learn to become creative, independent, and decisive problem solvers. They learn to understand their capacities, but also their limitations. They might get hurt, they might fall down, they might lose, they might err, but then they will stand up and retry through remarkable persistence and resilience. Apart from their curiosity, children, like adults and adolescents, might engage with risks for a number of reasons. Briefly, individual characteristics like temperament, personality, age, gender, cognitions, emotions, motivations, and prior experiences. At a family and parental level, including parenting modeling, parents' beliefs, parenting style, sibling effects, and at a broader socio-situational level, influences like peer interactions, media, and immediate contextual demands shape someone's understanding of risk as well as someone's behavior in accordance to risk and risky situations. Sensation-seeking and emotional arousal are also factors that determine someone's risk-taking behavior. Despite the complexity and the interconnection of all these factors, children's own understanding and reasoning of risk form a core part of risk perception in terms of cognition and of risk-taking in terms of behavior. So this differentiation, these two different levels between mentally processing and confronting a risk and between either pursuing or avoiding a risk shows that there are two tiers of risk. One tier is the one that relates to the understanding of risk, and the other one is about the actual involvement or avoidance, no matter what the outcome is, because in every case the outcome is uncertain. Theoretically and empirically, risk perceptions and risky behaviors are strongly correlated. However, the interesting point is that these correlations between cognition and behavior, thinking and action, are both negative and positive. Thus, this correlation between thinking and doing is not always straightforward. And there are cases like, for instance, where intuitions or heuristics or biases come in place, leading to doing without thinking or thinking without doing. My recent research, if you are interested, focuses mainly on the first tier of children's cognition and reasoning of risk and uncertainty. How do children interpret and explain and perceive risk? How do they associate different thinking skills like reasoning, judgment, decision-making when they face a dilemma with unpredictable consequences? How do they elaborate on the given information and choose to make decisions that will be for their own benefit? A final point relates to the role of education, formal and informal, in freeing children up from this culture of don'ts and alert panics that encourage them to stay trapped, in a way, in their comfort zone without moving outside this comfort zone. Risk education and precisely risk literacy are key. Risk literacy implies the ability to deal with uncertainty in an informed way. It is consisted of lifelong skills that develop through the lifespan and entail perceptions and responses to risks. Risk literacy includes communicating, understanding, and deciding whether to avoid or pursue a risk. Risk literacy is as important in our century, where old certainties get altered or replaced by others, as reading and writing were, in terms of literacy, in the 20th century, according to Gigerenger. The argument is that by providing children with the opportunities to manage their own risks and decisions in a familiar environment, that of the classroom, they get exercised in confronting unpredictability, not only in the classroom, but more broadly in the world. Not only at that moment, but later on in their lives too. Educational settings can contribute in cultivating a general can-do attitude towards all the diverse challenges and opportunities associated with contemporary life. Apart from focusing on the negative aspects of risk, we would consider the huge positives that are also attached to risk-taking. Bernstein attributes a more positive meaning to risk by mentioning that there should be a transformation of the perception of risk from chance of loss into opportunity for gain, from fate and original design to sophisticated probability-based forecasts of the future, and from helplessness to choice. The basic argument is not to leave children totally exposed to any sort of hazards, but to allow them opportunities that would encourage self-care skills, risk appraisal, and autonomous decision-making. Risk and danger can be pedagogically approached through a structured way, a more goal-oriented way, and children need time and space to have their opinions, their wishes, their views heard on what is safe, what is dangerous, what is secure, what is risky, and why. The solution of wrapping them up in cotton wool inhibits their capacity for innovation, inhibits their growth and well-being. Enhancing their risk awareness and risk competence is a means of safeguarding them. Encouraging them to take reasonable and responsible risks when necessary, instead of overprotecting them, is the way forward. Thank you.